Ralph Waldo Emerson, a philosopher and author, was the first person I ever heard speak about the harsh realities of nonconformity. His chilling, yet unapologetic statement was a sight for sore eyes, mainly for those who seem to be cut from the same fabric. Society everywhere is in conspiracy against the manhood of every one of its members. Judging by how the way Emerson explains this famous quote, brings forth this assertion that there's a conspiracy among society to get men to adhere to conformation. When he uses the word manhood, this specifically signals that conforming comes with a price. It comes with the price of emasculation. He implies that for some, they will happily accept these conditions open-handedly, but for others, there are some things in life that you can't put a price on. And for that reason alone, of dismissing the status quo, they'll be deemed as weak and as an outcast in society. He also says that those who don't fit the expectations of the narrative are far off being alone and judged than being admired and accepted. Going back to Emerson and his famous essay, Self-Reliance, he argues that we shouldn't be a part of society and that he himself removed himself completely from all aspects of inclusion. Be that as it may, in hindsight, as we think back, Emerson wasn't the first person to put these words and thought patterns into existence. The sentiment of these statements were whispered long before his existence. Though there were slight variations in the phrase, the emphasis of removing oneself from society has been featured in many religious subcultures. Be in the world, but not of the world. This is pretty much a vague statement, but still, we have to ask why these outlandish declarations were made, whether we believe in these saints or not, whether they existed or not. There's no denying that there's some power and lessons in the message that was left behind. And so, we have to ask why these so-called prophets were in agreement that there's something about this world that isn't to be admired or followed. To get an inclination into their psychological makeup in these times of antiquity, maybe one scenario that we can take a look at to gain some form of clarity is to think back to the days of Yeshua. It wasn't the stones inflicted upon his flesh that made him angry. It wasn't the ridicule that he had to encounter when walking towards his demise that made him hateful. And it wasn't those who he trusted that turned their backs on him in times of need that made him express exasperation. Despite all these unforgivable atrocities aimed at him, there was only one incident recorded that showed him acting out of rage. And this was the tax event, where he got mad and started flipping tables and expelling merchants and the money changers from the temple, labeling them dens of robbers. Was this the beginning of a glimpse into the future? A future where men become mice, held hostage to the materials, ordeals, and governors that precede them? Could it be the frustration witnessed from the so-called Messiah was because of the inception of these selfish mindsets? That in hopes of satisfying themselves, they had opened a treasure chest, which in fact was Pandora's box, and from this chest allowed a butterfly of effects to commence into the world, birthing a world of commerce, a world of consumerism and greed, ultimately cursing humanity forever. Now bringing it back to Emerson and his addition to Nonconformity. Though his works seem like an extended thought-provoking piece of writing, in all truths, it was just an expanded eloquence of verbatim. It didn't actually give any specific definition on what exactly we should not conform to. Born in 1839, Emerson would have existed around a time when the world was in its infantile procession of humanitarianism. There were no workers' rights. The black British nobility and their colonial rule was more prevalent. Low literacy rates, lower life expectancies, and so on. But though there's an argument to be said that the 1800s was one of the worst time periods ever, as controversial as it may sound, there's also an argument to be formed that the 1800s were also a lot better than today. Aside from people being in relationships where love lasted a lifetime, children being free from indecent exposures, and people being more in tune with the natural world rather than technology, when relating it specifically to men and manhood, masculinity was at an all-time high. In those days, men were born and bred to fight for family values, for land, and for righteousness. For example, it was mandatory for men to serve and fight in wars. While the men of today worry about getting their nails broken after getting them manicured, the calluses on the hands of our forefathers, our grandfathers, and great-grandfathers were hardened from carrying weapons and ammunition for days upon end. So with these acts of heroism and strong images of masculinity in mind, what did Emerson exactly mean when he spoke about conformation in a time where men were the prime example of masculinity? But in question, or deeper examination of Emerson, was he a futurist with the vision of Nostradamus? Was he looking for a crystal ball? Or was he part of a society that creates turmoil? And so, with the privilege of this inclusion, he got a sneak preview into what was going to become a factual experience in the near future. The truth is no. Emerson wasn't Jesus. He wasn't clairvoyant or possess any other supernatural power that could determine the future. He was merely a mortal man. And we couldn't exactly say he was accustomed to this information because of the times that he was residing in history, or should we say the historics that have documented and have sometimes given us their own falsified version of events to further or appease agendas which have been administered and sent from higher powers, sometimes like to paint a picture of these existing times as societal chaos. But as we have already answered, in terms of the family structure and masculinity, that was not the case. So how did he, Emerson, come to this conclusion regarding manhood? How did he know that a future of disgust, mayhem, and the endless succession of unmanly traits would come to haunt us? And furthermore, who exactly was this Emerson character? And what or who did he represent or work for?